Welcome back, everybody. Surprise video today. I am reviewing The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. And it's also a surprise to me because when I beat this game, or actually just in my time playing it, I did not expect to be talking about it before I made my ranking the mainline Zelda games. But the game was such a pleasant surprise that when I finally beat it this morning, I decided, you know what, there's enough here that I've got to talk about it. Now, it's not going to be an orthodox video game review video. If you want a video where everything's done typically, where every criterion of the game is broken down, the graphics, the music, the gameplay, the sound, the story, all that kind of stuff, check out someone more typical like an IGN. What I want to focus on today are my expectations with the game, what I expected with it being a remake, and is it worth it? It's a full-price Nintendo game. Maybe it's come down $10 now, but is it worth it? And did they do a good job with the remake? And even if they did a good job with the remake, is it worth spending your money on or playing it, period, with all of the other great Zelda titles that exist? So that's what I'm going to focus on, at least before I talk about some of the gameplay mechanics and components. And even when I talk about those, I'm going to be delivering them from the perspective of somebody who really looks at the fine-tuning and the quality of a remake or a remaster. Okay, so let's get into it. Or maybe I'll tell a little bit of a story before I do. Because I had already played the original. Now, I didn't play the Game Boy version in black and white. I played Link's Awakening DX on the Game Boy Color, and it was fine. It's a 2D Zelda game, okay? And I'm never going to rave extensively about any of those games. So when I saw this come out, I thought, man, Nintendo did a phenomenal job with the graphics. They're gorgeous. I love the art style. And I had one of those GameStop coupons, the ones that I've talked about on this channel before. You can buy 2 used games and get a third one for free. And I'm shopping around Christmas time. I pick up my 2 games that I want. And as I'm looking for a third, this is calling out to me. And I have to weigh the decision. Oh, are you really going to pay full price for a game that you've already played and beaten? Well, you do like the art style, so maybe it's worth supporting it. And sure enough, I went with the latter, and here it is. That said, when I finally started to play it, my first hour was nothing spectacular. It feels like a very simple Zelda. It feels like the Zelda 101. Here's your introduction to The Legend of Zelda. We're not going to throw too many challenges at you. Very straightforward, very streamlined. An NPC tells you this, and that you're going to go over here. An NPC tells you that they need something, and you're going to go and retrieve it, etc., etc. It's like, you know, your baby's first Zelda game, basically. But it's still worth it, I'm telling you. So that's how my first hour is, and I do a couple of dungeons, and it's like, yeah, it looks phenomenal, and it's cute, it's fun to play, and it feels good enough, but I ended up abandoning it for a few months. And then in preparation of this ranking the mainline Zelda video, and having to go back and replay some games, I decided to pick it back up again, and I really had a great time when I did that. I'll walk you through really quickly of what my progression was like as I played the game. So like I said, my introduction was nothing spectacular. The looks were the best part of the game, the visuals. And then I got into the dungeons, and I liked the dungeons more than what I had just played the week prior in A Link to the Past. Yeah, spoiler alert there. I wasn't too fond of that game's dungeons. This is what I want. The puzzles are not so convoluted, they're not too complex, and yet you're still going to different areas of the dungeon. You still have to do some backtracking if you pick the wrong direction. But even if you do pick the wrong direction in some dungeons, there are still things to do and challenges to overcome before rerouting your path a little bit. So that was really good. And so the first portion of the game is fun. It started to slow down a little bit around dungeons maybe 4, 5, and 6, and I actually got that feeling towards the end of the game of, oh, you know, there might just be 1 or 2 dungeons too many. Had they maybe put more quests into the overworld or had 1 less dungeon in the game, it would be the perfect length, or at least it would feel like the perfect length. That said, I kept on playing, and then when I got to the late game content, and I got to the post-game content, if you will, I'll detail that a little bit more later, it really picked me up again. And like I said, I beat it, I put the game down, and I thought, that was really good. You know what? Surprisingly good. How do I actually feel about the game if I were to rate it? 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10. I'm not going crazy with it, but still good enough to talk about and good enough to recommend. So what does it actually do as a remake, aside from the visuals? There's 1 bonus dungeon, which you can get to at least halfway through the game, I believe, and anything like that, I appreciate a lot. I think they already did a good job of making the game run better, and that would have sufficed for a remake. I don't need them to completely change the game when they do that. So I thought what they already did with the visuals were fine, but they added a bonus dungeon, and you can actually upgrade Link and change his outfit from green to blue or to red, and you can always change it back if you want. That's going to have some special attributes, making you stronger or making you have higher defenses. There's also a little mini game where you can construct your own dungeons and actually share those with friends, which I'm not able to do, woe is me. But you can do that. And even in doing those self-constructed dungeons, you have some stuff that you can win to progress through the main game. Heart pieces, optional content, obviously. Heart pieces, seashells, etc. So that's great. How about the actual mechanics of the game and the movement and all of those things? Let me tell you, with something like Pokemon Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, it really irked me that they didn't get the movement down. In trying to go for that particular style, they made it so that you can't really cut corners when you're running, because your character will actually collide with another asset on the map if you try to curve around the corner and you get stuck. It kind of jostles your character a little bit. No such thing happens in this game. The movement is really fluid. The only time I ever had any movement issue, and it's completely permissible, it's okay that it happened, is when you do your charging sword attack. And when that happens, you're meant to run in a straight line. Yes, you can veer it a little bit left or right, but you're meant to be running in a straight line. So of course, at those high speeds, if you collide with something, even the smallest amount, it's going to throw you off. I'm okay with that. The movement was great. The way that the bombs and the different items and the combat, those were all good. I never had any bugs or glitches with any quests, no soft locks or anything of that nature. So it seems like if there are any issues with the first game, those were cleaned up, not that I know of any. Everything that I experienced felt modern and clean and polished. So I just want to make that really clear. As a remake, I think they did a good job. And when it comes to these like remakes and remasters, you know, we just had Super Mario RPG release, and I've talked to people about it, and the impression that I have is it's not necessarily worth playing the remake or the remaster. Oh, it gets confusing. Just have to remember which one is graphical only and which one was actually redone. So with Super Mario RPG, you have a true enough experience if you play the original. I can't recommend that people go back and play the original. I think those are just fine games that can be left behind. This one though, if you're looking for a new Zelda game to play, or if for some reason you've never played a Zelda game, this is a great entry point. Or even if you've played other 2D titles and you thought they were a little too frustrating, a little too cryptic, or what have you, this is a great one to go back to. And I wouldn't be surprised if this becomes your favorite of the 2D titles, because right now it might be mine. I'm not too sure, but it might be. So let me get into just a few more things about the mechanics and the gameplay and all of that, and then we can wrap this up. I mentioned that the movement was great. No complaints about that. For a tight little action game, it feels fantastic. When you're exploring and adventuring on the overworld, I like that they took advantage of the new hardware and you don't have segmented or individual screens where when you go to the right, the whole camera shifts to a new scene. No, the overworld is one continuous map where your camera only pans with you. Perfect, that's how it should be. When you're in the dungeons, those are still broken up room by room, but that's how it's got to be for the gameplay, because some of the dungeon walls have secrets contained within them where you can bomb them or whatever, so it's fine. The game works perfectly as far as that stuff is concerned. The combat feels really smooth. Again, it's one of those easier games in the Zelda series, so everything is scaled back a little bit, perhaps. You're never going to become... Well, no, you do become fairly strong as you play the game. Enemies are never too overpowering. You're going to get, I think, 2 or 3 hearts of damage maximum, depending on what you face. And I know there are some other games where you might take 3 or 4 hearts of damage at a time. But using your shield and using your arrows, your hook shot, your different items, jumping and doing jump attacks and even firing arrows in the air or firing them on the ground, sometimes it takes a little bit of getting used to, but I think it feels quite good in this game. And I gotta mention, speaking of arrows and all of those things, the back of the box has, when one tool won't do, try 2 together. And here's one that the game teaches you with boots and a feather so that you can do a charging long jump. Well, I did not know about the bow and the bombs, and apparently if you have both of those items equipped, when you press the 2 buttons at the same time, you fire bomb arrows. So I played the whole game not even knowing that bomb arrows were a thing. I didn't miss them. I mean, I got all the collectibles in the dungeons without them, so they're not mandatory. But I just can't believe that I completely ignored a little optional feature like bomb arrows. So there's that. I just felt like I would mention it. Since we're on the topic of bonuses and tips and whatnot, I may as well mention another one. That with the Pole's voice enemy, that little bouncing cute rabbit, you can actually obliterate it just by playing your ocarina in the game. So there's something, a little secret that you might not know about. Nothing spoilery, I just want to mention that because there's no way to really learn about that when you play the game. What else should I talk about here? The story, I mean, it is what it is, right? I don't have to comment on it. It's a Zelda game and it's fine. Some people go crazy about the story in this game. They act like it's existential. It is. Technically, it is existential, but they have these crises about it. So it's nothing too emotional for me. The music is good. It's serviceable. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to pause this video and I just want to play for about 10 or 15 seconds a piece of this one track, which has become one of my favorite pieces of music in the entire Zelda series. Okay, here it is. So like I said, the music is serviceable, but then I'm going through the dungeons, and it's something like Dungeon 5. It was a cool, different mood because of the music. It was like a water dungeon or something like that. And then I got to Dungeon 6, and this music played, and I could not believe it. So this is another instance where remaking the game and remaking the music has been so beneficial to it. Love that track. I will say, though, if you care about the story and spoilers, don't read the comment section whenever you look up this song if you want to listen to it. People are going to be talking about the events of the game that happen at that point, okay? So no spoilers there. So let me just give a few more overall impressions and try to sell you on the game if you're not sure about it. If you're wondering if you should go back into the Zelda series and play an older title like this, although older, right? 2019 release. So compared to the other 2D Zeldas, I thought that its simplicity was appreciated. I actually preferred that this one was much less cryptic than some of the other 2D games. When you get stuck in this game, you can visit one of these phone booth houses and you can pick up the phone when it's ringing and this guy will give you tips. That's amazing. You shouldn't actually need to use a guide for this game unless you are stuck in one particular fetch quest, unless you don't know how many of a certain item you have to obtain in order to unlock the next area. So some of the fetch quests in this game, one long one is optional, and then some of them kind of come into play for actually accessing the next dungeons. Sometimes they're a little bit confusing, sometimes you could be scratching your head a little bit, but I think with the help there, you should be able to make your way through it. The overworld was a lot of fun to explore. I got into trying to find the seashells because they were basically my version of Koroks in this game, so I enjoyed going to little nooks and corners of the map, getting my shovel out, and then trying to dig them up. I enjoyed that the dungeons were probably some of the better dungeons in the series, right? I thought the amount of backtracking was completely fair. I thought the puzzles themselves were good. There weren't too many enemies, and if there weren't too many difficult enemies. As the dungeons progress later on, they do ramp up in difficulty and in the problems that they present to you, the puzzle challenges. So overall, yeah, it's a really good game. It's a good to decent game, you know? I don't want to overhype it or anything like that, but I just want to share my experiences thinking that it is worth it. If you've never played a Zelda game before, it's a great entry point. If you played the other 2D games and you thought they were a little too hard, too challenging, or too confusing, or too cryptic, then this is a great one to go back to. And if you've only played the 3D Zelda games, again, you want to just try a 2D game for the first time, why not pick up a game from 2019 with all of this polish? You are going to enjoy it, you're going to appreciate it, and the nice thing is, the more that you play the game, the more side content becomes unlocked, and then when you beat the game, you don't just throw it down and say, well, I guess I'm done, I guess that's it. No, like I said, there's still the seashells, there's still the heart piece upgrades if you haven't gotten them already, there are these little mini games, and there are the dungeon challenges that you can do. So that's it. The Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening. I'm glad that I went back to the game. I'm glad that I got to play it and beat it this year. And I'm glad that I could share this game with everyone out there. Is it worth playing? Yes, it is. Did I do a good job remaking it? Absolutely. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you want to hear more Zelda talk, then I'm chipping away at the series so that I can do my mainline review. I've got more games to play than I'd actually anticipated. But anyways, check out some of the other videos on the channel. Check out the other reviews or whatever suits your fancy, okay? Thanks again for watching. Bye-bye for now.